right, good morning, folks. Let's get this show started. It's good to see everybody here, packed house. I was referencing almost a church feel today, so that's in my Catholic faith. But ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to today's presidential lecture series, North Houston Highway Improvement Project, the bigger picture, right? My name is Jason Brown. I'm the Vice President for Advancement and University Relations here at UHD, and I have the privilege of working alongside President Blanchard and other esteemed UHD college colleagues to produce these very important events that we do here on campus. As many of you know, this event is a series of lectures and discussions that bring together the university community to reflect on relevant topics that address justice and equity. The University of Houston Downtown prides itself on being an institution where a myriad of ideas and perspectives are welcomed and valued through interaction in these type of platforms. It is through these platforms we get an opportunity to listen and interact with leaders of industry, policymakers, plus local and national experts that we better are informed and equipped to take on the challenges of an ever-changing world. Before I ask our moderator to take over the session and begin this important discussion, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Loren J. Blanchard, the president of the University of Houston Downtown, to share his welcome and greetings.
Thank you all so very much. It's a great privilege to continue to host these lecture series. And each time we do one, I always say that just when you think it just can't get any better, that yet we have another really important topic. This is our 11th installment of our President Lecture Series. And this one really centers on a statement that I make all the time, that the University of Houston Downtown really is downtown's university. And no more poignant can that point be made in terms of what we will learn today relative to the North Highway Improvement Project. You know, when I was hired, I was told that this is going to be one of the most important projects to watch and to monitor very carefully for the University of Houston Downtown. They also made it very clear that it was like a hurry up and wait kind of a situation that we were undergoing. And I can tell you that around Christmas time of this past year is when it just seemed like everything started moving. Obviously, with the signing, you'll hear more about that, the signing of the memorandum of understanding between Texas Department of Transportation and the city of Houston. And then the same thing occurred with the county. And then the federal investigation around the highway improvement work was also completed. And so with all of that, it's become very clear now that we are moving ahead with the project. And I know that, you know, it's probably a little unfair, and I even made this point earlier with our three panelists, that we have a tendency to be myopic about the highway project because we really are very concerned about what it means for UHD. But I want to just be clear, and they're going to make this point well known to you, that the North Highway Improvement Project is a 25-mile transportation project that will improve I-45 from Beltway 8 to Beltway 10. The project will reroute I-45 through the downtown Houston area along Interstate 10 and Interstate 69, directly impacting our campus, but also impacting nearby businesses and other local areas throughout the city. So this is going to happen in segments, and you're going to hear more about that very shortly. I know that we at the University of Houston Downtown will be the third segment to be impacted. That does not mean that we're talking 9-10 years from now. It's going to happen quicker than that, and you'll hear more about the timeline very shortly. You're going to get a formal introduction of our three panelists, including J. Allen Douglas, David Field, and Grady Mapes, and who will provide us a lot more information. But I wanted to personally just thank the three of you for being here today. And while it may seem like you have seen these gentlemen here for the first time, let me be clear that they have been deeply involved with us all along the way. And if not them directly, certainly representatives from the areas that they work for. And so I'm really grateful in terms of being a part of the fold, so to speak, so that we remain as well informed as we can and be ready for the impacts that will come, as well as what happens on the other side of the project when what's hard to believe is that these interstate highways will be gone. And then it would allow us to really be able to not have to look beyond the cars, but perhaps even just walk across to the business area as well as to the Wellness Center and the College of Science and Technology. But I digress. It's my pleasure to turn this discussion over to our moderator, who is Ms. Kim Thomas. All of you know her as our Vice President for Administration and Finance here at the University of Houston Downtown. She is all things matters of finance, resource, planning and allocation, campus safety and security, and capital projects. She leads a number of core business and administrative functions with a team of more than 200 UHD staff members. She holds a master's degree in public administration from the University of West Florida and a bachelor's degree in business management from the University of Maryland. She's been directly involved with this project, and we could think of no one better to serve as today's moderator than to have her with us. I will now turn it over to Ms. Kim Thomas.
Before we hand it over to Kim, I'm going to take the liberty to just give the quick bios of our speakers here. And I'm going to start from left to right here. But David Fields here on our left is the Chief Transportation Planner for the City of Houston. David is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners and provides strategic leadership for Houston system-level transportation planning efforts, including connecting transportation with land use to maximize the economic development for both the city and the region. David Fields, thank you for being here. In the middle here, we have Alan Douglas as the Chief Operating Officer for Central Houston. Alan also serves as the Executive Director of the Downtown Redevelopment Authority, plus performs the duties of General Counsel for the organization and its related entities, Central Houston, Inc. and Downtown District. Alan has served as Vice Chair of the Midtown Management District's Board of Directors since 2015, as well as the Chair of the organization's Urban Planning Committee. Thank you for being here, Alan. And last but not least, Grady Mapes is a transportation engineer with the Texas Department of Transportation, also known as TxDOT. A 20-year veteran of TxDOT, Grady was appointed Director for Houston District Alternative Project Delivery effective April of 2020. In this role, he oversees the district's alternative project delivery program, including over $2 billion in design and construction and over $3 billion in procurement. Grady, thank you for being here. We also know that you got to be on your way to League City by about 12:45, so we'll keep that in mind. We'll keep this rocking and rolling. So again, Kim, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Jay. And welcome, panelists. Thank you for being here. And as you can tell from this packed house, the UHD community is very interested in finding out what's happening as far as the impact to the region and to the university with the project. So let's start this conversation maybe with a brief history of the project from inception to today. Grady, would you mind?
Sure. So for us, NHHIP started probably close to 20 years ago when there were some initial studies done on the I-45 corridor going up to Beltway 8. So if you're familiar with the area, you've got I-45 that's running from I-10 to Beltway 8, and you've got the Hardy toll road that runs parallel. So studies were done on those two particular corridors and needs identified, and tried to begin scoping out what does the future of that corridor look like. So 45 and Hardy. As those studies progressed, decisions were made to separate those. You've got different components there, and so those studies continued in, I want to say, 2011-ish time frame. There was a decision made that instead of just focusing on I-10 north to Beltway 8, if we're going to make improvements there, you've got some other issues in the ring around downtown. What I'm calling the ring is I-10, I-69 on the east side, and then Pierce Elevated I-45 on the west side. So it was expanded a little bit to include not only I-10 or down to I-10, but also the ring around downtown. And really, that gives a better opportunity to address that entire corridor and the issues that were reflected in that study. So that progressed, and there you go. That kind of gives you an idea of where this ended up. But we've continued to progress, and we went through our environmental process, our engagement process. And then ultimately in 2021, we got a record of decision on the entire NHHIP project and all of this corridor. Now that's a very high level, broad, short history, but this project has been around for 20 years at this point, and it's a lot of details in that, but that's a very brief history there.
Thank you for that. Mr. Fields, can you tell us what the city's role will be with this project, working with TxDOT? And also, what are the expectations for the city after the project is completed in terms of transportation planning, which you represent for the city of Houston?
Sure, thank you. And thank you all for hosting today. So a couple of starting points. For the city of Houston, transportation is not just transportation. Transportation is a means to other ends. So that for something like NHHIP, the means of rebuilding a highway helps us fix a historic flooding problem, helps us reconnect by multiple nodes, helps as economic development, helps as quality of life, helps with air quality. And a lot of what we have been working with TxDOT up to this point and through the MOU is to make sure that those things are in the conversations from the beginning. So as opposed to just saying, we want to build road X and fix lane Y, making sure that X and Y translate into something that benefits the community. Now that the MOU is signed, all the agreements are in place, and we are starting to work, that is what these conversations look like as we work with TxDOT and our partners on the different design pieces moving forward. And back to the original question about what it looks like, at the end of the day, it's making sure that when we're at that future point and we can look back, we can say, yes, working together, we made Houston a better place through a TxDOT project running through the middle of Houston that actually benefited the entire community.
Thank you. And Mr. Douglas, from representing Central Houston in the Downtown Business District, what is your perspective of this project and what's the outcome at the end of the project being completed? How does it help the downtown redevelopment project?
Sure. Thank you for hosting this. Let me say, as a way of introduction, the Central Houston is an organization that, represents more than downtown businesses, but represents the downtown itself. So that we can begin to think of the downtown not as the central business district, but as a downtown neighborhood. And so in that spirit, it also has affiliated organizations as the Houston Downtown Management District, which is an assessment district. There are several of those in town, and there are 28 different TIRZs in town, and that is another affiliated organization. The TIRZ is a tax increment reinvestment zone, which in a sense takes incremental value from areas within the zone and reinvests those or redistributes those within the zone as a way of bringing the entire area up, whether it's blighted buildings, whether it's sidewalks and streets, whether it's parks. If you haven't had an opportunity to visit our new park downtown, there's Trepley Park. Grady talked about this being at least a 20-year undertaking. Central Houston has been, in many ways, in that undertaking since 2002, and has played a part in helping to, in a sense, create the opportunity for TxDOT to begin to think of 69 and 45 as a below grade segment on the east side of town that would then permit a cat park, much like the Clyde Warren in Dallas, which is a large undertaking. There are many different aspects that Central Houston sees as beneficial, not just to the business community. I think we all think of commuters, but I think Central Houston also and predominantly thinks of downtown as a neighborhood. How can people who begin to live downtown, and we're also thinking about converting business towers into residential towers. There's an undertaking right now with 800 Bell, the old Exxon building. How can those residents benefit from what we call a green loop around downtown, which is a series of trails, a series of assembly places, garden bridges that would loop and interconnect, create destinations as well as connectivity between outlying and adjacent communities near North Side, the east side of downtown, the west and the Midtown area, as well as the traditional Fourth Ward. So all of those things come to bear in our calculation of how we can assist in creating civic opportunities in Segment 3. And Segment 3 behind me, and I guess it's also in front of me, is the green area that you see. Now, some of that is in Midtown, as you can see the sort of tail at the bottom of the image. But the area around downtown is the part that Central Houston has an abiding interest in, as well as much as we can provide counsel for the other segments north.
Great, thank you. I'll turn this question over to Grady. One of the things we keep hearing about this project that is going to help with congestion and as far as mobility, increase and improve, transportation for the region and definitely for downtown area. Can you speak more about how that's going to manifest?
The infrastructure that's out there today has been out there for years. So through NHHIP, we'll be able to reconstruct and change how those traffic patterns use that roadway. So you've got congestion results from one, volume is part of it, but a lot of it is geometry on the roadway. We've got ramps and merges and weaves for the different interchanges as you go around this corridor that people are having to make a decision, or I have to get over into this lane, or I've got to get over 2 lanes to go 69 south and I'm on 288 or as an example. But through that, we're able to reduce and eliminate completely some of those movements and some of those points where that traffic is having to make a decision or come together. And it'll make for a more efficient movement for that traffic through that corridor. A lot of the infrastructure that's there today was designed and constructed under criteria that is now obsolete. It's the criteria has changed. We've got enhanced standards. And so this provides us an opportunity to be able to bring that roadway up to today's standards. Some of this is, well, it's older than I am for sure. But it's been around and we need to do something with it. This gives us the opportunity to do that and address those issues of congestion through this whole corridor here.
So I know what we really are wanting to know here in this room is how is it going to impact UHD as far as being able to access the campus? Not just during construction, we know that's going to be challenging, but after construction, how much easier will it be for us to actually access UHD?
Yeah, you can't really see it here, but I-10 realigns around the campus or through the campus here. And so when we get done where I-10 sits today, I-10 moves to the north. And so you're going to have, we'll still have some connections that come into downtown. You'll be able to come directly off 45. You'll be able to come directly off of 10 and drop in. But you'll not have I-10 splitting the difference, I would say. You kind of relocate it and you give more connectivity underneath. So it's a realignment of that roadway. It's going to give you some better opportunities to get in and out where you're not having to, I think the president said it, go over that or consider the cars there. So you'll be able to have that better direct connectivity without having the existing roadway where it is today.
So coming off of I-10, just some clarification, will it be, right now, it's very easy to access our campus from the highways. Will we still have that exit near our campus entrance, or will it be a little further off into the downtown area?
No, I think today you've got an entrance, if I remember correctly, comes into Franklin, right? You've got the entrance
Correct.
that dives off into or the exit that dives off to Franklin. That remains. And so you have that existing connection that's there today remains, and the ultimate configuration. So it's going to be that same, just direct right to Franklin, right to, I think it's Girard Street is a street that comes right in. And so you'll have that same connection. We've looked at that any number of ways, and so we're able to leave that as it is today to have that same direct access right to campus.
Great, thanks for that clarification. I appreciate it. So I'm going to direct this to you as well. So flooding is a major issue here. How was that put into the planning to address any flooding issues that would happen?
Yeah, flooding is a primary concern of, well, probably everybody in this room. And we have, as part of this project, we've done a complete study through the entire NHHIP limits. And we've gone back and the flooding criteria changed, or it's in the process of changing, from the old standards to a new. And the new standard is taking into account some of the more recent rainfall events. So if you've got Memorial Day flood, Tax Day flood, Harvey, those were significant events. And so we're considering those events in our analysis. And our goal is, and what we'll achieve is to bring the flooding down, and we'll bring it up to the proposed, it's called Atlas 14 standards, which, just as an example, the criteria, the old criteria, the 500-year event, if you were around during Harvey, you heard the 1,000-year event, 800-year event, those different definitions. But the existing criteria of a 500-year event, the new Atlas 14 criteria approximately is a 100-year event. So the criteria is much more stringent. And through that reevaluation, we're able to bring those water levels down at a particular event to where, say, our main lanes in a lot of these events were not passable. After construction, these lanes will be passable in those events. So the study goes from up at the north end. If y'all are, well, probably familiar, that water all flows right here. And so you're on more the downstream end here. And so we're looking at not only what we're able to do with our project, but also talking to the city about, we've got the North Canal and the South Canal projects on Buffalo Bayou that take out some of the bends, and they're going to provide some better conveyance of that water through those bends. And so we're working with the city and Harris County Flood Control to get those implemented and work out what that solution is. So it's an overall effort that we're very well aware of what the drainage does, what opportunities we have here to improve the system that's been out there for many years.
Great, thank you. Mr. Allen, this summer, Central Houston submitted a proposal of a $750 million amenity upgrade to help this project move forward. Is that still on the table?
It's a big number, isn't it? It is on the table. We proposed the number, and let me say that behind the number are a series of what we refer to as civic opportunities. In our conversations with the FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, when they were doing the Title VI investigation around the entire project, and this was in the spring of last year. And they asked us at the time, FHWA did, and they're the ones who will be, in a sense, holding TxDOT and the community accountable with their voluntary reconciliation agreement between TxDOT and FHWA as the project goes forward. They are the ones who asked us to give them an estimate of these civic opportunities. And let me begin, or in the middle of what I'm saying, let you know that we have purview only over Sigma 3. and that's the green area. And even then, we only have purview, Central Houston does, through the TERS and the Downtown Management District over the area that rings downtown. So the tail that you see is really under the purview of the Midtown TERS and the OST Alameda TERS. They have separate conversations that we're helping to facilitate with TxDOT, and they are included in that dollar figure. And that money is by and large, we hope that we will help TxDOT to fund the Cat Park delta, which would be the difference between what they would do as a base condition and what they would do with a proposed, for instance, Cat Park with a bunch of amenities, whether it's a public assembly, whether there are buildings on the Cat Park that would run between Edo and downtown, that would run between Lamar and Commerce. It's about a 30-acre assembly area. The base condition of that would be a concrete cap. We are proposing something more, and that would be through a series of conversations with both the community, the city, the county, over what that is. When that is determined, TxDOT then comes in and says, well, that's going to cost you more. And so we would be able to hopefully step up with some of that. It will be an amalgamation of monies, and it's going to be a long process.
And I looked at that proposal, UHD, there's a green space that's proposed for UHD in that proposal. So thank you for that. My question, again, is TxDOT. How do you continue to engage communities impacted by the Highway Improvement Project? And for all the individuals here today, how can they, as in their communities, also be part of that communication as far as what's happening for the project and any impacts or any changes that are going to happen with the project going forward?
Through I call it our environmental process because that's an easier term for me to think about. But through development of a project, we have what we call stakeholder meetings, and we'll meet with government agencies, neighborhoods. We get questions from individuals. We have public meetings. We have those various opportunities and meetings that we have as we develop a project. But for this particular project, and I say project, this will be multiple projects for TxDOT. So when I say, I should probably say program. For the NHHIP program, we continue to engage with local stakeholders, whether they be the city, the county, the management districts, the TERS groups, neighborhoods. I get questions from individuals even, and a lot of what we're doing is trying to get information out. This program for TxDOT, we have a lot of opportunity to address issues in this corridor, but we also understand that there's a lot of questions. There are a lot of concerns through this corridor, and we've got a website out there, NHHIP website. If you Google TxDOT NHHIP, I'm sure you will find it. It'll be one of the top 2 links, I would hope. I've got it bookmarked, so I don't know. But there's contact information on there. I will tell you that I'm listed on there specifically somewhere. My contact information is there. But a lot of times where we provide opportunities for meetings, they are a somewhat formal process, and we have notices and we go out. But outside of that, we hear from local community, and we schedule, I don't know how many we've had, but we've scheduled and we've met with individual groups, individual property owners, individual business owners to help them understand what the impact potentially to their property. Say if there's right-of-way acquisition, what does that look like? What is that process? And we have those individual conversations at times. Ultimately, we're trying to provide as much opportunity as we can to answer the questions to as many people as we can. And it's, for a program like this, that's a huge task. The website's a great resource for us, but we've got a lot of local engagement here. You know, our office is just I-10 in Washington. It's not far from here. If there's ever a question, we have people come in and say, "Hey, I need to talk to somebody about NHHIP." Great, let's sit down and talk about it. So, you know, I wish I could recall the number of meetings that we've had. But part of the VRA, the voluntary resolution agreement that TxDOT signed with FHWA, requires that TxDOT go out twice a year and talk to the community stakeholders here. And we're still working through exactly what that looks like, but that report will go back to FHWA, and we have to report on our progress and what we've done and how we've addressed the concerns that are identified in that VRA. So while we've got somewhat of an informal process where we receive questions and we talk with the community, that is a more formalized way through that VRA between TxDOT and FHWA that TxDOT has committed to specific meetings on specific timeframes to be able to go out and provide updates for NHHIP.
Thank you. So we've been talking a lot about the project. You know, UHD is in segment 3. Could you provide like a timeline of construction, how this construction phase will happen?
So everybody can see the map here. I should have brought my glasses. I'm to the point I need glasses. Okay, so I can see that. Okay, so right now, back in November of 2021, if you're not familiar, back in early 2021, Federal Highway Administration asked TxDOT to pause activities on NHHIP. And
Do you mind elaborating on why we had the pause?
Sure. FHWA received Title VI complaints into the NHHIP program. And so they accepted those complaints and they began a Title VI investigation into the NHHIP and TxDOT's process and how we are addressing all of the Title VI concerns. And so as part of that, in March of 21, FHWA asked that we pause any procurement activities related to NHHIP. And then a second pause came about in June that requested that we pause all activities on NHHIP. And that included right-of-way acquisition, design, all of it. So NHHIP, June of 2021, we stopped and we were answering, FHWA was asking us a lot of questions as they did their investigation. I think we did 3 rounds of RFIs. We provided thousands of documents to FHWA in response to their RFIs. But as we went through that process, in November of 2021, TxDOT requested to unpause. When I say unpause, just begin work on some individual activities related to NHHIP. And those 3 activities that we requested were to resume detailed design on segment 3A, which is down here on the tail. That's on I-69 from the spur 527 to 288. And 3B, which is the I-69 and 288 interchange, and also to continue our coordination with the Union Pacific Railroad. Union Pacific Railroad has 5 crossings on the I-10 corridor, and we've been in conversation with them for several years now about what NHHIP is, how our roadway is going to look in the future, how does that affect their existing crossings, and we ultimately have to come to an agreement with UP on what TxDOT's going to do, what our design looks like. It's a long process. But those 3 activities were allowed to move forward. And so since late 2021, we have been doing detailed design on segment 3A and segment 3B. So that's a long way around to get to when are we going to start construction. The first
And
project,
to let everybody know, we're segment 3C.
you are segment 3C1.
C. 3C1.
To confuse
Thank you.
it further. And I can touch on that a little bit. But the first project that we're going to put out the door is 3B. That one, because we don't have as much right of way through that area, we're able to do our design and get that package together and get that out first. So what you'll see summer of next year, if everything comes together, we have an outfall project that will run underneath the existing St. Emmanuel roadway from the I-45, I-69 interchange, and it outfalls to Buffalo Bayou. And that outfall is the drainage. There's a pump station there at the I-45 interchange. That is the drainage that will, or the outfall that will drain the 3B project. So 3B depresses as you come up from I-69 from where it is today, and it drains to Buffalo Bayou. So there's the first project will be the outfall project, 3B interchange, the I-69 288 interchange will be next, and we're looking at spring of 2025 to get that out the door. So spring of 25, summer of 25 construction, and then 3A will follow, and construction roughly summer, fall of 26 is what we're anticipating right now. So where does that leave U of H downtown in that process? So I-10, we refer to I-10, you see it here as a 3C corridor. We have, right now, our plan is to break that up into two projects, 3C1 and 3C2. So 3C1 is what just for ease of reference, the I-45 and I-10 interchange is out there today. So basically the west half of I-10, and then 3C2 is the east half of I-10, the I-69, I-10 interchange. We are still working to resolve which one of those projects goes first. So we don't necessarily have a timeline on that. That the delivery mechanism on that will be a little bit different, we think, because of the size of those projects.
You can't ballpark it for us?
20, oh boy.
We won't hold you to it.
Well, it's not a straightforward answer. And
Okay.
no,
All right.
I will ballpark it for you. Construction could reasonably start in, I'm going to say late 28.
Thank you. We won't hold you to
If, I'm going to throw a caveat out there.
it. Of course.
Depending on which part of I-10 we start. So the first project on I-10 reasonably could start construction in 2028. Now, what that means for U of H downtown is if we start on the I-10, I-45 portion, that could reasonably be 28. If we start on the other side, it would be later because the scope of this, we're still trying to evaluate resources in the area. And our contracting, our contractor partners, there's concerns there about different things, but that's why it's a difficult question, because we don't really have a distinct plan right now between those two projects. And we're working to come up with that answer, because that's the question we're getting right now. You're moving forward. When are you going? When's it going to be here?
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Mr. Fields, from the city's perspective, what is the long-term benefit of this project from a city's perspective?
So I think you've heard Grady, actually both other panelists mention some of these things. Let's put the transportation benefits on the side. We heard about drainage and flooding. We heard specifically for downtown, but for the city, it's the entire length. There are historic neighborhoods, especially in segment 2, that have flooded on every major storm. When I talked earlier about the means to the ends, this is a transportation project that is going to hopefully solve that flooding issue for those neighborhoods. When we talk about, one of the ones I forgot to mention earlier is safety. which Grady had touched on about the weaving. Just a show of hands, who knows exactly which lane to be in when you're driving on any of these roads downtown to get exactly to the off-ramp you're trying to get to? Maybe half, maybe a third. It's tricky. And because you don't know, that causes conflicts, which frequently leads to crashes. And some of the things that this project is going to do is eliminate a lot of it. So when it's cleaner, when it's, and ask yourself, if you had to explain it to someone who'd never been here before, could you do it? The more that goes away, the safer these roads get. So it's a transportation project that's a safety project for the city and for all of you and for everybody who lives here. And as Alan described, the CAPS, the opportunities for civic space, for green space, for activity space, in our downtown especially, which, I don't think anybody would question is, a pretty concrete heavy area. It feels like a lot of metal and concrete and maybe not the most greenest place in the region. Those are opportunities we want to grab onto. So if at the end of the day, we can come back and say, look, the benefits of I-45 was, traffic moving better. I didn't even mention the transit benefits, working with Metro for the improvements on Metro Next that they're going to put in. And in addition to that, we got less flooding for the neighborhoods and safer systems for everybody and green and civic space. And to us, that's a win.
So you talked about the green spaces. What is the expectation? I mean, is this a city project that's going forward that's going to incorporate more green space? Or is that something that TxDOT will be, leading the charge for? So,
I'll start, but I feel like everybody's going to want to chime in on this one.
okay.
So from our standpoint, it's an everybody project.
Okay.
Everybody's in the pool on this one because it is the TxDOT right-of-way. It is the TERS and the management districts and the local players. And it's us representing the citizens and the business organizations that, all the stakeholders of the city to actually make that space something usable.
Since David's created the space for me to say something, I will say that one of the things that Central Houston and the TERS and the management district have spent years in conversation with TxDOT, in conversation with stakeholders in the community, thinking about and proposing not only are the green spaces that are encompassed on the Cat Park, the large one that we call the Edo Cat Park, the 30-acre Cat Park, but the Green Loop itself, which creates green space on the near north side, enhances the green space and connectivity to the Buffalo Bayou on the west. And then most interestingly, for me at least, and the one in which I have the most arm wrestling with developers over, is retaining the decommissioned Pierce Elevated as a high line that connects the east side of downtown to Buffalo Bayou and is a point of both connectivity and destination. And so each of those areas, in a sense, creates new landfall, and we can green that up respectively, depending on the monies that we have and the philanthropy that we can grow, and the interest of other allies.
Thank you.
There are a lot of conversations going on between TxDOT and local entities and stakeholders about what green space looks like in these projects. It's been an ongoing conversation, and we're happy to be involved there. We do quite a bit of work with landscaping as part of our projects, but what we're talking about on NHHIP with other stakeholders is a more enhanced version there. Now, it's a differentiation of what TxDOT does, what other stakeholders do, but it's a large conversation to try and differentiate what those responsibilities are, what are those funding opportunities, and we're working to understand what those visions are. And while timing becomes an issue, we want to move our projects forward. We don't want to preclude any future opportunities for green space. So we're in the conversation with management districts, city, the TERS groups about what are those ultimate goals? What is the vision? Because through our design, we have to accommodate for ultimately what may happen in the future. If we design something today that does not account for that, we're short-circuiting the process, and then we eliminate the opportunity, a future opportunity. So we're very much involved in that conversation, and it's been going on for a while. And it's a good conversation. We're to the point where we're into very minute details, and we want to understand from our stakeholders what that vision is and where can we accommodate a future plan that we know may not happen with the project. It may be a subsequent project, but we want to be able to accommodate that for whatever that looks like in the future.
Thank you. So Grady, we know you have to depart early, so we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions from the audience.
So we've talked a lot about green space and transit. I'm wondering about bikeability. Will that be improved through this process? And if there's anything you can speak to directly, that would be great.
Well, let me start off with that. We have, as part of our design, let's start on segment 3 because that's the one that's immediately in front of us. On segment 3, we have these cross streets that cross I-69 today, the city streets that cross. We have an agreement with the city on what we refer to as a pedestrian realm. And so as we reconstruct those cross streets, we've identified on both sides of the street a certain width that will accommodate sidewalks, it will accommodate a bicycle path, and then it'll accommodate some buffer space. So that's not right up next to the lane. So on all of the garden streets in segment 3, we have, I think it's a spreadsheet that shows the exact widths of what has been agreed to for each one of those bridges. Some of them, they're not all exactly the same, but they all incorporate that same plan to a certain extent. But up and down through the corridor and as part of the VRA, we've committed to looking at what opportunities are there to provide either restore existing facilities or improve those facilities. And there's a lot of specific requirements in the VRA to look at related to pedestrian and bicycle access through this corridor. But it's been an ongoing conversation, and we're committed to providing that access as part of this overall program. David?
I can just tag on to Grady's comment to say that at least in segment 3 we have, I think, 34 different what we call garden bridges that have widths over the highway or under in some of the north side renderings that accommodate both pedestrian and bicycles, and in some cases have trellises and a sort of separation not only between the surface road and the pedestrian, but also a kind of planting that would perhaps accommodate a sense of space between the underlying highway and the pedestrian or bicyclists crossing the bridges. So there's a kind of high comfort pedestrian notion, multimodal, throughout at least segment 3 that we're trying to sort of envision.
And as one of the guiding points for the conversations, it is actually the Houston Bike Plan. So when we have these conversations, what is part of the 1,800 miles the city is building out bikeways can be incorporated into the NHHIP project, whether that's across or north-south. Maybe one clarification so everybody's clear, the bikeways are not on the level of the highway. We're generally talking about on the service roads or crossing them, so it is a safe space to bike. So don't go bike down there.
Thank you. So I am one of the founders of the UHD Bike Club. President's here, both here. And we're a little bit concerned about White Oak Bayou and how is that affected with the construction when it starts around this area?
When you when you say White Oak Bayou, are you asking about just drainage overall? The trail. Okay. Excuse me. There are hike and bike trails that we've got proposed that are within that area. I don't remember exactly what it looks like there. We're working with Harris County Flood Control to put in trails within their right of way, because up and down White Oak, that's under Harris County Flood Control's ownership. But we're working with them to be able to put trails in throughout. It's segment 3 for sure. I've got a better idea of segment 3 because that's where we've been immediately focused. But I know even up north of I-10, there's some connections that we're providing there that aren't there today. You're asking about the MK? Is it the MKT trail? What trail is that there? Mhm. Okay.
And you're talking about during construction.
You're talking about just during construction, or just overall? What's going to happen to that? Okay, sure. So, interestingly enough, I was on the project that built that trail several years ago. So during construction, we are going to accommodate, whether it's a detour, whether it's a reroute. There are definitely going to be times where we're going to have a contractor building something within a footprint. Part of our, I think it's actually detailed in the VRA, is to accommodate pedestrian and bicycle access during that process. So we're very well aware of, during construction, what has to happen to be able to allow those movements. It's not necessarily something new and unique to this project. That's something that's always been a concern and looked at. But during construction, it's a little difficult to tell you exactly what's going to happen, because I just don't know. If I knew, I'd tell you. But we understand that it's an existing facility. We want to maintain that existing facility during construction, and we'll do what we need to there. At the end, I'd have to go back and look at the exact schematics and show and understand where those are. That will stay. And then there are other trails that are proposed along White Oak Bayou through this, and then an adjacent project immediately to the west on I-10. So I would encourage you to go to the NHHIP website and pull up the schematics that are there. It'll outline, it should show those trails on there.
Thank you. So 2 quick questions. Well, one statement first. Thank you for all the work that you all are doing on this project. It indeed has been controversial for the city and the county, and it's been difficult to progress through, but really thank you all for doing this project, because it will in the future be instrumental for Houston. Second thing is the delay of the Title VI concerns. That delayed the project nearly about 2 years, maybe a little over. Do you have a cost estimate of the delay on that? And I get that the Title VI need to be investigated and fully support the entire discussion, but is there a cost estimate associated with that in terms of the infrastructure's delay, ordering, rising cost, logistics on that? And then the second question is, you'd mentioned the railways in some of these segments, in particular to 3C and 3A. Are there any railroad conversion or projects that are specific to those areas that might impact the university?
So a particular cost of the pause, I don't remember it off the top of my head, and I probably should know that. The short answer is, construction today is as cheap as it's going to get. The costs, I've been at TxDOT for almost 20 years, and the costs don't go down. And so any delay that we see, there's a real cost to that. I should have that number. 4%. Okay, there you go. That's my fact checker right there. She's going to keep me in line. Yeah. So what the way, and that's probably a good representation. So every year, for our purposes, when we identify a project and we say it's going to happen in 3 years, we estimate a 4% escalation per year from today through 3 years out. 3 times 4, 12%. So we're having to account for that future cost, so that if you program it in today's dollars don't equal tomorrow's dollars. And then you were asking about railroad projects and how they may impact U of H downtown. There's been some concepts thrown around in the past, a realignment of a UP track that was out there. I don't know that that's going to happen, or it's been out there, but right now the conversation that we're having with UP today is about their existing corridors. So you've got what we call the Beeson One Bridge out here, and then you've got the St. Arnold track, you've got the Amtrak just around you right here, and then there's 2 more. There's the West Belt and the Bell Line that they have further to the east on I-10. So those conversations that we're having with UP and have had with UP over the last several years are about their existing facilities and the impact to both NHHIP and their track as it is today.
I'd like to reiterate my colleagues' appreciation for this immense project. I have 2 questions that probably require speculation for answers. So one is the 3C1 segment. Once it starts, how long do you think it'll take before the next segment can start? In other words, what's the time frame for this 3C1 segment? So that's the first question. Second one is that along the freeway, segment 3 along, say, the stretch from the juncture at 69, 288 to past the George R. Brown, I had seen photographs in which it looks like it wants to go underground to create green space. I lived in San Francisco during the time of the earthquake that demolished a freeway that went into downtown, very similar to the spur that we have in downtown. And it took about 15 years for the community in that area to kind of really turn it into spectacular space. Is that the similar time frame you would see from the start of construction to the time of filling in that green space to revitalize that segment of downtown?
15 years from today?
No. 15 years from the time it starts, because, you know, the freeway collapsed. It took 3 or 4 years for construction to start, probably a little bit longer than that. And then about another 10 years for the businesses to move in, to reconstruct because there were train tracks, they renovated, blah, 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 right? But it took, I actually thought that was an amazingly short period of time, given what you now see when you walk into that segment of San Francisco. So I was sort of trying to get a sense, and I think everyone here can sort of think about the fact that, you know, this is an amazing potential revitalization of a segment of downtown, and I wanted to get a sense of, do you see that kind of time frame, longer, shorter? But then most critically for us in this room, 3C1, how long will it take?
Okay, let's talk about 3C1 first. 3C1, that is right now, we estimate that's about $1.2 billion, if I'm not mixing the two up. That's a large construction project. That is, you've got an interchange there. It's got a lot of movement. You've got 2 interstates that go through there. It's complex, and that's, I'm gonna say, 5 or 6 years of construction by the time we get through all that. If we can take a vote today and everybody agrees we'll just shut it down and don't allow traffic, we can do it a lot faster. Just for information. But it's going to be, that's a complex project. That's a large project. That's a lot of resources the contractor has to dedicate. So it's not just an overnight project. So there will be, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years for construction there. Now, for the part behind George R. Brown, I'm going to speak for TxDOT. We control more the design and construction schedule than we do the development after the fact schedule. So for us, that is a very complex project from a technical standpoint. Constructability of that is somewhat difficult as well, just because of the depression and what it looks like. So that one's another multi-year project. Now, what happens on the back end, that would all come about after construction, and I may let Alan or David talk more towards what they see for future opportunities and timeline there.
Forward, I wanted to thank Grady for coming today. We really appreciate you spending time with us and informing us about the project. And I know you have to leave out. So once again, thank you.
So I promise this is not a way to get out early, but I had a previous engagement I need to get to in League City. So I appreciate everybody coming, your interest. NHHIP website has contact information. If you have questions, please let us know. I'm happy to talk with whoever. If you have a group, an organization, somebody that needs information, you're just not clear on what this is and what the timelines are. These are questions we're getting, and they're very understandable. So let us know. We're happy to engage. If there's something that we need to look into that we don't know exactly right off the top of our head, I will admit I'm the first. We'll dig into it and get you a response. So I'm happy to be here. Happy we can share information and appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Grady, for taking the arrows.
Yeah, exactly.
I always appreciate an opportunity to speculate. I think I left San Francisco in '86, so I just missed the demolition of that roadway. I will say that if we look at downtown, if we look at the East End, we already know that the East End is urbaning up. There is a fair amount of gentrification going on. What we do know as we look at the east side of downtown is that there's a virtual land bank of opportunities there. And so in terms of a timeline, 15 years seems long to me in terms of what could happen from the moment of finishing. And some of that will depend upon the kind of amenities that can be placed upon that 30-acre park, whether we have buildings, whether it's a public assembly, whether it's a concert shell. We don't at this point know. And much of that will depend upon the funds that can be raised and applied. We had in 2017 a study by HRNA that investigated the impact of the Edo cap as well as the Pierce Elevated. Should that be turned into a high line where if you've been under the Pierce Elevated, if you've been around the south end of downtown or the north end of Midtown, you know that there is, in a sense, underperforming land, that there's underperforming businesses. That is a result really of the shadow of a vehicular raised roadway. That all changes. And I think that some of the speculation on the land right now around that area is being baked in, knowing that that will change as NHHIP moves forward. So my hope is that that timeline is somehow shortened and truncated.
Yeah, I agree with Alan. I think one of the big differences when Embarcadero came down in San Francisco, it caught everybody off guard. The plan was not to take it down and do something. There was an earthquake, it came down, and the community and government and everybody got together and said, let's use this opportunity and figure it out from this point forward. We, to give a shout out to the planners in the room, are using this opportunity to do all this planning in advance of the construction being done, which also involves our partners talking to development potential clients, us working with the community. So on the day all the construction work is done, we're already ready for that redevelopment and that, those changes to start occurring. So it feels like it would be much faster than that other project.
Hi, yes, thank you for doing this. I was wondering, since we know that some part of this project is going to be underground, was underground mass transit ever considered as opposed to an underground freeway?
So transit overall, I'm going to start. If you don't mind. Transit overall, I think y'all are familiar with Metro, the transit agency. They have a plan called Metro Next, which shows exactly where and what they want to build over 20 years, maybe. I'm not sure exactly the timeline. And the voters of the region voted something like almost 70% of the region voted to fund it. So the what is kind of out there already. So now it's taking those opportunities and overlaying when these strategic opportunities come up. So BRT extension to Intercontinental, light rail extensions to Hobby, inner Katy BRT, all of these, and the University Corridor project, which is in design right now. All of these have already been shown to the region, and the region has said, yes, we want to fund these things. So I think instead of saying what different things and then saying, the money that everybody has agreed we should pay, let's move away and start over. I think the idea is really, let's build the things that everybody has asked us to build.
And the only thing I would add is that Grady mentioned that we began in 2000, or at least TxDOT began in 2002 with the North Hardy study. And that was actually put on pause in order to accommodate the transit system you now see, to work that into. So in some ways that was baked into the NHHIP before it even began to be called the NHHIP.
Yes, I had a question about how will this impact any historic buildings or structures?
I would need to go through the EIS for all the details of the historic stuff. And
I don't think on segment 3 that it does. The only possibility would be whether there are any historical structures on what would be the west side of Edo, what we call Edo. But I can't speak to segments 1 and 2.
yeah, we would need TxDOT to give you the answers on the details of their environmental review.
Thanks again for being here. I submitted a question earlier, and TxDOT did address a little bit about the hike and bike trails. I wanted to know, what is the noise and pollution impact to downtown and the surrounding areas from the start to the completion of the construction? Thank you.
I'm going to apologize. I do think we need TxDOT to answer anything about their environmental impact statement and the results of it.
What I will say, without being a TxDOT whisperer, is that if you look at the agreement that TxDOT has signed with the Federal Highway Administration, which is called the Voluntary Reconciliation Agreement, that came out, it incorporates the MOU that the city forged with TxDOT. It incorporates the MOU that the county incorporated and agreed to with TxDOT. There is a segment in there of air monitoring around both schools, but also public pedestrian right-of-ways. And so, and there is discussion in there in which TxDOT has agreed to construct walls and roadways in ways that reduce the noise on communities. That doesn't speak to your hike and bike question, but I think it's worth looking at the Voluntary Reconciliation Agreement, because there are standards that have been put in place that will be monitored by FHWA.
Maybe you can't answer this one, but during the 5 to 6 years that the construction on our segment is underway, is it going to be tolerable to work here? Like, I mean, if you're blowing up the highway for 6 years, like that makes it hard to teach a class.
I don't know what's your standard of tolerance.
Well, I will address that question. University of Houston downtown, we're working very closely with TxDOT, and we're working on an MOU, and using that MOU as a way to address the concerns you just talked about. We also have concerns about parking, about access, anything that will, impact the university. So we're working on an MOU, an agreement with TxDOT to ensure that we can keep everybody comfortable, have access to the university, and have parking. Really, we want to make sure that UHD is hold harmless during the construction phase. So we're in talks right now with that agreement with TxDOT.
And as part of that, just for my edification, as part of that MOU involve noise levels and classroom?
Vibrations, yes. We touch on all those things that will have environmental impact to our campus.
I have a question. You've been speaking about this 30-acre park that Houston will get, but I also heard you say the word if and raising money. So my question is, if the money cannot be raised through philanthropic means, or if there are cost overruns on the project, what happens to that park? Is there a possibility we are left with 30 acres of concrete?
No. It's a fair question. I will say that the TERS, the downtown TERS, is poised to prioritize that 30-acre. I call it a park, but it is a 30-acre assembly area that has opportunities to be a number of things. The degree to which we plan the top of that area is also the degree to which we have to fund the supporting structure that we would have to ask TxDOT to build. The delta then between sort of what I call the base condition of just a regular old cap without the supporting structure and a fortified structure that we would, the TERS, would accommodate the cost for. We are already pursuing avenues of both philanthropic giving, federal and state monies, but also local city and county monies. It is, I would hope, not a possibility that that centered 30-acre opportunity would be left as a concrete cap alone. It's not fair to the community, and it's not fair to any of us who want to utilize it and see it as an opportunity.
Any more questions?
So as Vice President Thomas mentioned earlier, that the work has already begun for us. I know that it seems like the projected time frame seems to be far out, but the reality is that the work is happening now in the development of that memorandum of understanding for the University of Houston downtown. That includes what Vice President Thomas just mentioned, but it also includes the fact that now we're working to finalize the various parcels of land that will become available to us that's owned by TxDOT, that's right under our noses, so that we can use it either for development purposes. You know, we've mentioned time and time again that for the University of Houston downtown, we're so landlocked that it makes it almost impossible to even think about how you can increase the footprint of the university. Well, this provides an opportunity for us to increase our footprint, but it also provides us an opportunity to protect the green space that's around us. And so we're working very diligently now with TxDOT to make that agreement with them. But it also means why we have been spending so much time in front of the state legislature as well, that we don't we need assistance in terms of being able to purchase the land that will become available, not only through TxDOT, but we're also in negotiations with Metro that also has land and property that's near us that would help to increase now the footprint and to really understand best what our master plan for the university will look like, given that once the highway improvement project has occurred. And it also provides us the opportunity, the land acquisition, to also look at private land that's right under our noses, one in particular that we know is already up for sale, but others who are raising their hands pretty high at this point to get our attention, to help us to know that this could become a part of the base of the new University of Houston downtown when you take a 10-year look out.
Are there any additional questions for our panelists? All right, great. Oh, there is one more question.
Not really a question. My name is Raquel Lewis. I am the Director of Communications for the Texas Department of Transportation. I am based here locally in the Houston area. I wanted to assure you that the answers and the responses that you heard from Grady earlier today are accurate and
We would hope so.
accurate and responsive to the questions that you had. And also the website that he mentioned is I-45 North and More.com website. Every topic that you asked a question about today has information and resources readily available to be responsive to those concerns and details. And if you find that you don't have enough information there and readily available, you certainly are encouraged to contact us. We always want to continue the conversation. We always want to be responsive to the concerns of the community, and we look forward to working with UH continuously, our partners here, and all of you. So if there's anything that you have for me individually, I'll be here for a little bit longer. I'll share my contact, and we'll look forward to working with you.
Oh, thank you for that. Appreciate it. So I want to thank our panelists, Mr. Fields, Mr. Allen. We really appreciate you spending time with us today and getting us up to date and informed about the project and giving your perspective from Central Houston and from the city of Houston. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well, again, we thank you very much for being out here with us, and of course, Grady and in spirit. I know he's on his way to League City. Y'all did a fantastic job. I know this is a very, very complex project, and I hope it's not the last time that we see you all on our campus. We hope that we can continue talking about this and preparing for it as we all are trying to improve our location here and make a better place for ourselves and definitely our students. So thank you for everybody that came out. This is a wonderful turnout, and please, there's a couple more drinks left and boxes to go. But again, you all have a wonderful day. This concludes our President's Lecture Series for today. Thank you so much.